All right, happy Monday. Welcome back. At the end of the last video, I told you we had some cases that were going on. Obviously, in one courtroom we had pleas, in another courtroom we had trials. In another courtroom, 50 miles away, because of what we were trying to do with our federal partners, we were trying a second case, and we're going to go through all of that pretty quickly. We had a bunch of pleas, you can do basically 40 or 50 pleas a day. You can only do a trial a week, maybe 2 trials a week. So one of those pleas that came back getting significant time was Scott Crocker. He's 44 years old. He's from Wilmington. Wilmington is and has been one of those distribution centers, and I've told you guys 100 times, sort of the way this happens is the drugs come in across the border, whether it's fentanyl or crack or whatever else. It comes in across the border in Mexico, it goes up to New York and then back down the I-95 corridor. Along the way there are several spots. Myrtle Beach, unfortunately, is one of them, and Wilmington is one of them, almost sister cities. I'm not saying that any of that had anything to do with Scott Crocker. I'm just telling you sort of the geography and how it goes down. But Scott Crocker, 44, from Wilmington, was caught in our area selling heroin, and he pled guilty and received a 10-year sentence for that. In another courtroom, like I said, we were doing, well, another drug case that took place last week. It was a plea. Antonio Brown, 22, of Sherrill. Start that over, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Just keep going.
Another case that pled last week. This was not a drug case, but it appears to be a gang case. It was May 17, 2020, and we've talked about this over and over, but most of our tourists that are coming in are not committing crimes. So when you hear about 20 million tourists coming in over the course of a year, the vast majority of those guys aren't doing anything wrong. But what we do is we have day trippers from Charlotte, from Shelby, from Sherrill. And Sherrill's about an hour away. Back in May of 2020, there was a situation right downtown in Myrtle Beach where rival gangs were arguing with each other and started shooting at each other across Ocean Boulevard. Now that, from a prosecutor standpoint, makes it pretty tough. From a common sense standpoint, it is, hey, you shouldn't be shooting across Ocean Boulevard. From a prosecutor standpoint, it is who shot first? Is the other person shooting in self-defense, defense of others? Anyway, Antonio Brown, 22, of Sherrill, will be with us for the next 10 years in South Carolina prison for shooting across. That is the second guy that is pled in this series. There are more to come. One thing that you should know is if I could preach anything, it is when you're in front of a judge, that is not the time to get nervous. The time to get nervous is before you go to Ocean Boulevard and before you do a bad thing, shooting back and forth. Because now, Antonio Brown will be with us for about 8.5 years before he comes up for parole, because he was shooting across Ocean Boulevard. That is going to put him into his 30s before he is out. And hopefully he and the others will learn something from this, but that is unacceptable, and there's a price to pay. Those are some of the pleas. There were a lot more that went on. Generally, we'll take care of about 200 to 250 pleas during the course of a week. In another courtroom in Florence County in federal court, we've got several U.S. attorneys. We talked about, even with the plea there, how on almost all of these cases, what is better for the citizens of Horry and Georgetown County. Do we take this in federal court, or we keep it in criminal court? The next case is Dominic Brand. Dominic Brand's 29 years old from Marion County. He was convicted after a bench trial in federal court of kidnapping Marianne Elvington, taking her right across the line into North Carolina up into the Lake Waccamaw area, and then came back down through Dillon County into Marion County, where he killed her and ditched her car. Our chief deputy is also a U.S. attorney. Scott Hickson, along with other federal attorneys out of the Florence office and the Columbia office, tried Dominic Brand. Again, he was convicted of all of those charges. He hasn't been sentenced yet, but he could receive life imprisonment. This actually started off as a death penalty case in federal court, but in the federal system, when it amounts to a death penalty case, you have to go up and get permission from Washington to go for the death penalty. So this looks like it may be a life in prison without possibility of parole type sentence, but we were able to try this case very quickly, as it was about 18 months ago is when this all occurred, and he was convicted on all of these. I hope it brings a semblance of justice to the Elvington family. They're a longtime family up from the Green Sea, Duford area, Nichols, up in the western, northwestern part of the county, and they lost a mother and an absolutely wonderful woman in Marianne Elvington. But the justice in that is that Dominic Brand, now 29, hopefully will spend the rest of his life in prison for that action. In Horry County at the same time, we were trying a Shaquille Blakely. He is Shaquille Blakely. If you saw any of the news of that, he was in a wheelchair, and Blakely had a pretty extensive record for arrest. Blakely was actually offered 15 years, and he rejected that. I believe, like I told you on a video not long ago, with the guy in Georgetown with the trach, a lot of times if people have physical injury, they think, well, this is going to be so tough, you know, I can fool the jury, I can sit up around here and look real sad, and that's going to gain some sort of sympathy. The jury had no problem convicting Mr. Blakely. He's 29. He is, of course, confined to a wheelchair, but he's also going to be confined to the State Department of Corrections for the next 45 years for his part in a kidnapping, armed robbery, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. That case started on Monday, ended up on Thursday, and for his part, Mr. Blakely will be serving 45 years. He will have to serve probably about 40 of those before he comes up for parole. So we are trying to take a very tough approach on drugs, on gangs, and on violent crime, and those are some of the examples of what happens when you do those crimes in Horry or Georgetown counties. We really work hard to make sure that other people that may be thinking about doing that sort of thing will say, I don't want 45 years in prison, and rethink their actions before they do them. But if they don't, the prison's got plenty of space. So we are actually at a low. So Horry and Georgetown, we're going to do our part to fill it up. Anyway, we are at the Solicitors Conference this week. There won't be any court going on this week because all of the prosecutors and all the public defenders are getting their CLEs. But we will take up a topic next week, and I will be with you again then. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in a week.